Okay, you're good.
Thank you. All right, we're going to call the April 13th, 2020 regular meeting to order. Vice President Lobach, will you lead the board in tonight's Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Yes. I pledge allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible.
Little delay.
Liberty and justice for all.
All right, wonderful. All right, we're getting the hang of it. Ms. Moak, roll call, please. Nancy, roll call. There you go.
Nancy's on mute.
Nancy, you're muted. There you go.
Ashlyn Kausgard.
Say,
Ashlyn.
say aye, Ashlyn. You're here?
Hi.
Hey, very good.
Ms. Herbal.
Yeah.
Mr. Curry.
Here.
Mr. Estes.
Here.
Mrs. Buttimer.
Here.
Mrs. Hill.
Here.
Mr. Lobach.
Here.
Dr. Bruno.
I am here. Thank you.
Mr. Guzman.
Yeah.
All right, very good. Just a reminder to everyone that unless they're speaking, it's a good idea to mute your mic so we don't pick up any unnecessary background. Thank you. So let me turn first to Dr. Kaskowski, and Melissa has a number of items to report an update on.
Right. Well, gladly, we're going to start tonight with our celebration video. It seems like such a long time ago, but I'm hoping that everybody sits back and enjoys our tribute to Rock Your Socks and World Down Syndrome Day.
Junior High with a couple of the 7th grade science teachers and a couple of students to talk about the cool work that's going on at Hadley for World Down Syndrome Day.
For the past few years, we have a unit in 7th grade on genetics. And so for the past couple years, we have invited Mrs. Vicchio, who has a daughter, Marissa, with Down syndrome, and Mr. Lovak, who you just saw, who has a son, Parker, that has Down syndrome with the district, and they have presented to our whole 7th grade about Down syndrome because we celebrate World Down Syndrome Day on March 21st. This year we're celebrating on the 20th because 21st is on a Saturday, but if you see my shirt, 321 means 3 of the 21st chromosomes. So they have 321 chromosomes, that's what causes Down syndrome. And so some of the activities that our kids do in class is they make something called a karyotype. And as you can see, this is a normal karyotype. Normal humans have 23 pairs or 46 chromosomes, but someone with Down syndrome has 3 of number 21. And the students actually cut these out and they put them in order and they're able to see, oh wow, this is someone that has Down syndrome. So those are just some of the things that we do. And then we have this celebration with the speakers, and then Jason very kindly buys us socks. So we wear fun socks. We all celebrate that.
We usually have a genetics counselor or somebody who's an expert in the field of genetics come and talk about genetic disorders so that the students understand Down syndrome as well as many other genetic disorders.
So this year for our advisory period, every Wednesday we have Wildcat, and each student in the school is going to decorate a sock in honor of World Down Syndrome Day that our friends Marley and Kate are going to talk to you about now.
Hi, I'm Marley and I'm in 8th grade. Hi, I'm Kira and I'm in 8th grade. And in celebration of Down Syndrome Day, every student in their Wildcat class is going to decorate a sock. And we're going to hang them in the building for World Down Syndrome Day.
Again, Jason, I'm going to say just on behalf of everybody, thank you so much for generously supporting this and including everybody in the district, including the board in this. If you want to say a couple words, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Hopefully there's not a big delay because it'll sound weird. But first off, I just want to say thank you to everyone in the district for really embracing this and celebrating the joy of what this really is about. This is Rocking Your Socks is about celebrating, the differences in every single one of us that make us who we are, and accepting that difference and recognizing that the differences are what make us who we are, what make us a community, and really what bring us together. One thing I saw in that video that I just don't know how to explain is Mr. and Mr. Shrimp. How they got their bodies like that, I just will not know. So I want to give a shout out their flexibility. But in all seriousness, I want to thank Dina and Tracy, Dina Sabara and Tracy Guerreri, for what they've been doing with the 7th grade science classes at Hadley for the last several years. This is something that the district has been addressing for the last several years before I was on the board, and this is just kind of something that makes it fun and it makes it easy for everyone to participate. We were able to donate socks to the Churchill PTA auction, the Lincoln PTA auction, and at some point we can get back to giving socks to students when we get kids back into the classroom. But I just thank you to everyone who graciously allowed me to give socks out to everyone, and to everyone who rocked them, and just a really fun thing. So thank you everyone in the district for rocking your socks.
Thank you, Jason. Okay, just a couple, some of them are a little bit longer, some of them are quicker. Wanted to give the board an update on the work of IASA has put together a COVID-19 task force. And just so that you know, it's a source of ongoing information sharing and input for all districts across the state of Illinois. And then we have a focus group within DuPage where we share information, and the task force brings us information that's coming from the state level, whether it's ISB or the governor's office. And so it's just, and a group that has kind of been put together to help districts navigate the information and tackle some of the bigger issues that are coming up that, we couldn't foresee before this happened. So just know that this task force exists, and we do meet virtually on a very regular basis. I want to update the board on the Nancy Zars sessions. We've now completed 3 of the 4 sessions with Dr. Zars. Just want to share that these sessions have been attended via live stream across DuPage, across Illinois, and even outside of the state. So we're working on session 4 will be about returning to normalcy. So whenever that may be that we're starting to talk about and have an idea of when school will be called back to session, how do we support families with that? Dr. Zars is also working with the ROE and Franzik and myself to plan something that will be very likely delivered during Teacher Appreciation Week. And it's really geared to be a support regarding taking care of the caregivers. I want to share that Principal Dively and myself have been tossing around a lot of great ideas about virtual commencement planning, and we're really excited. I mean, it's different But we have every confidence that we can do something that our kids will feel is very special and acknowledges this rite of passage for them. We will be virtually meeting this week with a steering committee of parents. And then after we have our initial meeting with the steering committee, at some point we'll be doing a Zoom with all 8th grade parents if it looks like we're not going to be able to have a in-person commencement, but some really cool ideas. And I'm not going to say anything more than that because we want our student board members to have some surprises. So I'm not going to share all of that with you at this point, but some really great ideas. Want to share with the board that we are scenario planning related to the long-term closure, whether this means May or after May, and that we're not resuming school until next year. I think, we're all aware that there is no answer at this time of what that might look like, but that our planning is really well underway in the event that the closure extends into May or even further. This includes curriculum planning as well as logistical planning for closing down the schools, being ready for summer, being ready to return next year, how we'll handle distribution and collection of student materials, and just overall planning for next year. So while you'll hear about it a little bit later in our program, our capital plans will still be on target. If anything, there's a chance that they might be slightly ahead of target, but as of now, we don't have anything to say that our summer work won't be able to happen, our capital work. But as many of you may have heard, both the governor and other organizations have said that they do anticipate that there will be a level of impact on summer programming. So we're just kind of waiting and watching and monitoring that situation so that we can be planned and ready regardless of what that decision is as to whether we have summer programs this year or not. A strategic plan update for the group. We put our process on hold for the month of April out of respect for the incredible amount of effort, time, and energy being devoted to remote learning by our staff and families. The focus right now needs to be on maintaining health and wellness for everybody. CEC is working to create a revised plan using virtual meeting sessions to get us finished prior to or early this coming summer, which has been our target all along. The community survey remains active and open. Responses were very low when everything hit and the mandated closures happened. So we have left that survey active and open, and we will, when we have some dates set with CEC as to when we're going to resume, we can advertise and remind our community that the survey is open because we definitely want their input. We've extended this again, no one's time and attention has been on the strategic planning process. It's really been all about sustaining wellness and programming and access to learning opportunities during COVID-19. So we don't want to rush this process. We want to stay on path as much as we can, but we don't want to shortchange anything. So when I have some additional information from CEC to share, I will. I do want to mention that Hadley 8th grader Drew Bennett, who is part of the strategic plan committee, has actually been working directly with Dr. Van Clay from CEC by email just to really share some pointers of what he has learned all about Zoom and different functions within Zoom and how we might use that as a platform to do these meetings. So I want to thank CEC and Drew for just thinking differently and allowing, as we like to call him, a project manager, allowing a student to really be involved, not just in the strategic planning process, but now involved in how this may look using a different platform. Remote learning update. I'd like to thank Katie and our instructional coaches for all of the work that they've put in from revising our e-learning matrix, which, as a reminder, you all know was meant to cover us for a day or two of weather-related closings. It was never intended to be a long-term fix in the time of crisis. And we have now shifted, in terms of rigor and level of engagement and complexity just to what is now being called remote learning. I want to thank our teachers. They've just demonstrated patience and flexibility and creativity as they work to implement this plan during a very unanticipated and stressful period of time. I think they're no different than we are, that, you know, your family kind of goes into chaos mode as soon as you get on Zoom for a meeting. And I'm sure it's no different from parents. So what we're really saying is, please extend patience and grace both directions, because we know the best laid plans will go wrong from time to time, and understand that teachers are doing this from home when they have families there as well. And families are trying to do this when they have, you know, other children in the house, and it just never fails that sometimes things are going to go wrong. So patience and flexibility and grace cannot be overrated in this time. You know, I want to remind the board, you know, about the financial aspect of all of this, and that, you know, I've heard different pieces of information and misunderstandings about the status of what's happening in schools. And I just want to, you know, publicly remind everybody that schools do not have the option or remedy of using furloughs and layoffs. Those are not available to public school districts in DuPage, nor any public school district in the state of Illinois. As many of you know, the executive order issued by Governor Pritzker prohibited school districts from releasing public school employees during this crisis as a matter of budget reduction, while also mandating the continued payment to third-party contractors whose services will be needed upon the reopening of school for in-person instruction. Additionally, each school district was charged with the duty of providing food to all students who request it during the school days. So as you're aware, we've been running our meal pickups, and you know, we don't turn families down who show up in our pickup lines, and we will continue to do that, even though supplies are getting harder and harder for our vendor to get. We will problem solve that on a week-by-week basis and continue to do our meal pickups that are held out of Hadley. That is really it for my updates. So unless there's any questions, I'm gonna turn it back over to Bob.
Melissa, were you planning to give an update on the letters?
Which one? Because there's been a couple sets of letters now.
The federal IDA.
Okay. As part of, well, let's consider that a kind of COVID update. So one of the pieces of work that COVID task force did was to work on a co-authored letter to federal legislators regarding IDEA mandates, which, as you know, IDEA impacts students who receive special education services, trying to be forward thinking about remedies for things such as extended school year. In planning around this and what that might look like, it's obvious that if we are not called back into school because it isn't safe to bring school back, that impacts our ability, or in our case, it would be through CASE, our cooperative, CASE's ability to offer an extended school year program. So that's another thing that this task force is working on, is all of those things that are coming down the turnpike that we all need to know and be monitoring. We just don't have answers for as of yet. So they've shared some letter templates. I shared with the board. We prepared our letters to our federal legislators and sent those out, you know, with a series of questions about, you know, asking questions and suggesting input on how some of these waivers might play out in the event that school does not return until next school year, what that might look like. So that is another piece that the task force is working on. And then as of today, a new piece that they are also working on, and this is more of a DuPage issue, but is really just to work with informing the county board. You know, obviously all states are looking at some forms of tax relief, extensions without penalty, what that might look like. So working to kind of summarize and synthesize information because the impact of that will be different on various districts, but just making sure that the county board has accurate and factual information from districts to know what that impact might be if some of those remedies were offered, with the stance that, school districts want to be part of a solution. We just want it to be a well-informed solution, so that there's no unintended consequences.
Very good.
That was the update today as of about 2:30.
Okay. It's changing.
Melissa, I just have one question for you, and I know you know the answer, so I don't feel like I'm putting it on the spot. But I think it's important. Can you address how the district plans on handling IEP meetings that are scheduled while schools are not open?
Right. So, we've received legal guidance from our firm, as well as all of the major law firms are sending out updates with interpretations of the different requirements and where things may or may not have been relaxed. But we are moving forward with, continuing to hold all meetings. Laurel is our direct contact for that. So, virtual forums, phone conferencing forums, we have different opportunities for holding those. So we are still making best attempts to stay on track and hold all of those meetings. And there's been some relaxation on requirements in terms of testing for initial evaluations and things like that. But I don't want to misquote out of Laurel's realm, but we are still moving forward with all of the business that has to take place above and beyond and outside of servicing kids. All of those key functions are still happening.
Great, thanks.
Any other questions? Okay, hearing none. Let's turn to board reports. And just to keep us in some kind of order, I will just call out board members and invite them to offer any board reports, so we're not talking over one another. So Guillermo, any board report tonight? Oh, you're gonna have to unmute yourself, Guillermo. There you go. No? You're still muted. Let me see if I can help. Mike, can you unmute Guillermo?
Am I on mute?
There you are. There you go. Okay,
Great.
start again.
Just want to thank all the school members and all the support, everything that they're doing during these difficult times. It's it's been very hard, and you guys have worked really hard. So truly appreciate that. I think I just see what my son is doing, trying to keep up with school, and it's just been great. And truly appreciate that, and it's great to see you guys all doing well too.
Thank you. Thank you. Julie?
Nothing to report.
Very good. Bruce, I see that you're on. Any report?
Yeah, my video's not working. I don't know why. But
talk to Mike.
Anyway, no, just teaching remotely is a challenge. That's what I've been learning. That's all.
Okay, the voice of experience there. Ted, how about yourself?
Nothing to report, thanks.
Very good. And Jessica?
Just a reminder that the D41 Kids Foundation is partnering with community outreach to collect donations to support our students most at risk. And from now through the end of the school year, donations made at d41kids.org will provide grocery gift cards and needed supplies to students most in need. And those gift cards have been going out. So we thank everybody who has donated thus far, and we are still accepting donations. And also just an update that Bob and I met in the policy meeting last week virtually, and we will have a new bundle to present at the next board meeting. So that's something to look forward to, pages and pages of policy.
You framed that in the best light possible. Yeah, thank you. Mr. Lobach, Any report?
There we go. I'm sorry, I wasn't clicking at the bottom, I was looking at the top. First, I want to apologize. I think I missed the Hadley PTA meeting last week, so but I'm assuming it didn't happen. But I just want to kind of echo what's been said and just want to give a thank you to our staff and our teachers and to Katie and our coaches for what they're doing just to get us through this. Just watching my kids and how each of the three of my kids in D41, how their teachers are handling learning and interacting with students and keeping the learning going. And it's hard for our kids and it's hard on our teachers and seeing them just kind of give the students the support that they can through this time is really great to see and really appreciate it. So thank you.
Thank you. I did want to just note briefly a couple of things. I became aware that one of our instructors, Mr. Tomaszewicz, hopefully I said that correctly, teacher at Hadley.
Just go Mr. T.
Mr. T, I should have just went with Mr. T, that he is serving on the statewide remote e-learning task force that the State Board of Education put together, and that he is one of a small number of educators statewide who was asked to serve on that task force. So I want to raise that up and applaud Mr. T for his service and representing the school district. Also, just a thank you to the principals, assistant principals at all the schools, Dave Scarmato and Dave's team, particularly Jesse, Gabby, Dr. K, for spending a long week handing out Chromebooks to parents. I don't recall, Mike, exactly how many. I stopped counting after I ran out of fingers and toes, but it was a large number. And it was great to see members of the community coming through to receive these Chromebooks and offering their gratitude to the district. So thank all of you for putting in that time. And last, because I want Nancy Zars to understand that I really pay close attention to her presentations and would encourage people to watch those webinars. She made a big point of stressing how humor is really important to deal with tension, to deal with stress. That's a very good coping device during a crisis. So in honor of her, I'm going to tell a very brief and very appropriate joke, but you're going to have to listen really clearly to get it. All right, you ready? So I ordered a chicken and an egg on Amazon. I'll let you know.
You should have just gave me the shout out, Bob. Said, Jason, thank you for bringing the humor to these meetings, and we appreciate it.
All right, very good. I'm done.
Thank you. We appreciate you being done.
A little board humor. Okay, we'll move on now to the highlight of board reports. And we have student board reports. We've got both Ashlyn and Abby. I don't know who's going to go first. Are you going to do these in tandem? I'm going to do these. Who's up first? Abby, you're up.
Together.
Okay, go ahead.
Because of the circumstances, both students and staff around the world have had to shift to online learning. Will be gone 4 weeks so far of learning. I
can't hear anything.
Abby, we're having trouble. Abby, yeah, I'm sorry. We were having trouble hearing you. Your audio was not coming through very well. You want to just maybe check your setting?
Or closed caption it.
Oh. And then maybe, and try that again. Let's see what happens. I don't know whether you can be of any help, Mike. Go ahead, Gabby. Why don't you start again when you're ready?
Can you guys hear me?
I can hear you now. That was better.
Because of the circumstances, both students and staff around the world have had to shift to online learning. B41 will be going on 4 weeks so far of e-learning, and Ashton and I personally feel the district has done an amazing job of furthering students' education during this difficult time.
Great. Daily schedules. Sorry.
It's okay. Start again.
Students' daily schedules consist of assignments from all of their classes. These assignments range from online work to hands-on learning at home. For example, I've had to bake, take online quizzes, and exercise with vision teachers virtually.
Oh, was that it? I'm sorry, you were both a little difficult to hear, but was that, did you conclude? Yes? Abby, did you have something? Did you want to-
I think Abby has her part. Abby has
My internet's a little not working well.
Yeah, I think that's right. How about this? Given the problem that you're having, Ashton, I don't know whether yours is a little slow too. You've got written reports, correct? So perhaps you could just email them to Ms. Moak, and we'll make sure that people have access to them. Okay, and sorry about the technology. We'll work on it for next time, okay? It's good to have you in the meeting. And I know that
Bob, if I could just say something about our two student board members, given the situation that we're in, it's so nice just to have our two student board members on the board, especially given that we have two 8th graders and what our 8th graders are going through. Just to have someone representing those students on the board that can give their insight as to what the students are going through, what the students need are, whether it be for e-learning, whether it be for technology needs, or whether, dealing with commensurate issues and these kind of things. Having them on the board has been a great asset. And so thanks to Melissa for bringing them on. Thanks for Abby and Ashley for serving.
Yes.
Yeah, they've actually, I'm going to throw in, because the girls had some video challenge or audio challenges, but just to share that when I referred to planning that we're doing for things moving forward, without giving away some of the really cool details that we just don't want to give out tonight, our students, particularly our 8th graders, but our 2 student board members and then our 4 students on our strategic planning committee have given us so much input and feedback, but have also stepped up to lead some projects that we have going on right now in the district so that we can continue to acknowledge all of the end of the year events and things that start to come up. So as I said, I don't want to say too much and ruin surprises, but I just really do want to share that they have all stepped up to take on roles that are far larger than, I think we had hoped any of them would be willing to do, and they just keep blowing us out of the ballpark every time we ask for something. The ideas that they bring to the table are always far better than what we start with. So thank you to Ashlyn and Abby, and I know they can thank the other students as well.
Thank you.
And we want you to stick around because I know Eric DePorter is waiting for those really good questions that he only gets from the 2 of you. So he's not going anywhere. He's waiting. Very good. Thank you. All right. We'll now move to public participation. Members of the public who wish to address the board were instructed to email the board before 6 p.m. At this time, we received 2 emails. That's correct, Mrs. Moak, 2 emails? Any emails received after 6 p.m. will be forwarded to the board after the meeting and posted with the official minutes once approved. And at this time, I will then read the comments that we received. The first one was from Miss Jennifer Rath, who is a parent at Hadley. And Ms. Rath has a number of questions. How many people took the Strategic Planning Committee survey? With the stay-at-home orders, what is the status of the Strategic Planning Committee? Would the committee consider extending the response time for the survey? A second question was, are all D41 employees, including the paraprofessionals and classified staff, still being paid during the COVID-19 crisis? Are employees that D41 contract out for, like bus drivers, still being paid? What is the status of outside contracts for buses and food service? I'm wondering if there are any positions like lunchroom aides, bus drivers, maintenance, et cetera, that are not being paid during this crisis. And then finally, with the unemployment rate skyrocketing, will the district consider abating property taxes? In Dr. Kay's, just to note that in Dr. Kay's report, I believe many of those questions were answered, and there may be others that will be addressed during the course of this meeting. And as is the practice of the district, they will also be following up. So thank you, Ms. Rath, for sending those questions to the board. And then the second one comes from Erica and Barry Nelson. As parents of a public school educator, thank you to our district leadership, principals and assistant principals, social workers, staff, and all teachers. We add our voices to those who have shared their support the past few weeks as our educational structures have required significant changes and commitment to a different way to teach and to reach your students. The impact of these changes is felt in ways that are deeply concerning for all families who are navigating work or loss of their jobs, children, young adults, and returning college student needs, and particularly those who already face challenges related to poverty, food insecurity, and health concerns. The state of Illinois announced last week a free service, Call for Calm, that is staffed by local community health workers. You can text either TALK or Hablar, Hablar, to 552020. And within 24 hours, you receive a follow-up call. The Glen Ellyn Youth and Family Counseling Service is working with their current clients, but unfortunately do not have the capacity to take new clients with only a 1.5 FTE of counselors on staff. This 30-year-old local counseling service is also a school liaison for D41 social workers and other staff, which is now unable to accept new students in our schools who need mental and emotional health. Many mental health conditions first appear in our youth and young adults, with 50% of all conditions developing by age 14 and 75% by age 24. And 1 in 5 youth have a mental health condition. Fewer than half receive any mental health services. In the Sunday, April 12 Chicago Tribune, Joel Rubin, director of the National Association of Social Workers of Illinois, identified 4 things that Illinois can do immediately to help young people deal with the emotional challenges they are presented with during the pandemic, including designate an office to lead emergency mental health coordination for young people, including people who are underinsured, uninsured, or those who are unsure how to connect to services. We raise this tonight to appeal to our Board of Education to work with Dr. Kaskowski's and the principals to identify current caseload, new needs, and potential needs for mental health services since the start of remote learning. Without the ability of our dedicated social workers and teachers to visibly see their students Monday through Friday, one may assume that the mental health needs of our kids are greater than access allows. We have community members who are licensed clinical social workers and psychologists who may serve as a resource. And then a quote, poverty has been consistently linked with poor health and increased risk for psychological disorders in children and adults that can persist across the lifespan. That's from the American Academy of Pediatrics. We are a school district that celebrates excellence in many ways. Let's work on excellence in supporting the mental well-being of students today by providing the necessary staff and social supports. Thank you for making this commitment now for a healthy re-entry into our schools. And thank you to Barry and Erica Nelson for their comments. Okay, Ms. Moak, nothing else, correct? Yes, we're good. All right, so we'll move into presentations. And Melissa will introduce our guest.
All righty, I'm going to introduce Principal Scott Klespis and thank his building leadership team for pulling together their presentation tonight and agreeing to do this and keep us on schedule instead of postponing it until a later date. Scott is going to do something a bit different tonight, and he's going to be showing the board a video clip of one of their virtual building leadership team meetings. We talk about BLT a lot, and we hope that this gives the board a little glimpse into what conversations sound like during those meetings. So I'm going to turn it over to Scott to walk us through his presentation and then show the video. I do want to prep the board that the video is a little bit longer than what we typically do, but in going through this, there wasn't a natural break. So we're going to, we'll take our cue from the board and from Scott. So again, we have a little bit longer of a video to show at the end of Scott's presentation.
Dr. K, thank you very much for the intro, and Board of Education, thank you as well for the opportunity to present. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, good. Because I've been having some internet issues as well. So I feel for those of you that have had those issues, because it happened to me earlier today in a meeting with staff where I cut out. So I'm going to do my best to get through this. I'm going to go ahead and share screen here and get things set up. I would like to, while I'm doing that, introduce Annie Robinson. Annie is my literacy coach in the building, and she is also my BLT co-chair. And so Annie is here as well to assist me with this presentation. So like Dr. K said, we have a few things. This presentation looks different than even a month ago when we thought it was going to be. And so as we work through this, we're going to run you through this slideshow pretty quickly and then share that video with you. And so just some things about Forest Glen that make us unique and that we are proud of. We are the only pre-K through 5th grade building in the district, and 705 students all total. That makes us the largest of the elementary schools. When you take our 196 pre-K EC students out, however, we have 509 K5 students, which makes us the smallest of the K5 attendance areas. And so just kind of an interesting and unique thing for us. We are very proud of our exemplary status that we earned this year as a result of the state testing. And I've taken the opportunity here to share some scores with you. A few things that we are very proud of. Our science scores, the 81%, meeting and exceeding, was the highest of any of the elementary schools in the district. And you can see our other scores here as well in terms of our ELA and our math. And while those numbers are not as high as some of the other buildings, we are proud of the growth that we have seen from the last 2 years of Park and then into IAR testing. And so seeing growth here has been something that has been important to us. We also know, however, that this ELA 56% is a number that we need to improve upon. And our reading in general, reading instruction, is something that we need to improve upon. So that will be the focus of our work our presentation this evening, and our work as a building and our school improvement is really around reading instruction and what we can do to be clearer with our instruction for students. And so we have really tried to focus in on what we can do to try to bring reading to the forefront. And so within the building, if you were to have a chance to walk the hallways, you would see some different things. One thing we asked all staff members to do was that we wanted all students to be able to see us as readers. And so a building leadership team put together this activity where we asked all students to identify a favorite children's book and send it to us. And with the help of our leadership team, we were able to put together these posters that you will find throughout the building, on the doors, on the office doors, on the classroom doors, so that students can see us as readers, and also share. It gives us an opportunity to have conversations with students and share our love of books from a children's literature perspective. Another thing that you will see within our building is that both Shea Baker, my assistant principal, and myself have set the goal to try and do monthly read alouds with students. And so a couple of photos that you see here and around the perimeter of the slide, you can see some of the books that we have had the opportunity to share with students. I will tell you that I started very strongly with this February and March, or actually January, February I kind of hit a little bit of a stall and wasn't able to get into as many classrooms as I would have liked to, but I was very strong with it early in the year. And again, and Michelle has done a nice job as well, getting into classrooms with our pre-K students for them to be able to hear another adult read a story to them. So it's been very important for us to be able to do that. And then we have our birthday book wagon. And so you see a few photos here. And so with the help of Mrs. Robinson and Mrs. Calicote, my digital media specialist, we were able to, we used to do birthday pencils for students, and we would just hand them a pencil on their birthday and congratulate them. And we thought we really wanted to shift the focus and do something different. And so we went to a birthday book wagon so that every student in the school during the month of their birthday, we bring the wagon around. It's usually the first Monday of the month. And we will bring the wagon into the room, and students have an opportunity then to select a book that they would like as a gift from the school, and as another way for us to promote reading. And so both Annie and Marcy have been great at keeping me on track with this and getting things up and running. And they went to the lengths of decorating the wagon for me, found me a hat to wear, which you can see there in the center photo, and we really just have some fun. And kids look forward to the birthday wagon, birthday book wagon coming around. It's a nice celebration of reading and of the students themselves. One thing we know that we need to work on is we've obviously missed April and May. One of the big questions we always get from students as well is, well, I have a summer birthday. How are you going to get me what's going to happen with a birthday book? And we had plans in place at the end of the school year to make sure that every student who had a summer birthday got a book as well as our pre-K students. And so we've got some conversations that we need to have as a leadership team to figure out how now with this, the stoppage of school, or with this absence of school, how we're going to get those materials to students. But we are committed to making sure that we figure that out and get that done. Annie, you want to talk a little bit about these two events?
So one of the things that we've been doing is, as we have been trying to really promote our staff to identify them as readers and really build their reading life, and have our kids see our teachers and staff as readers more, we're starting to see it spill more into our classrooms. So over here, this first grade reading event, what our first grade team did is they tied it to their social studies family tradition unit. So they started a tradition where they had families come in and everybody was able to sit by the campfire and read. So all the classrooms did it at the same time. And then we also have the opportunity, again, something that makes us unique and we really pride ourselves on is that we are pre-K through 5 building. So we had the Big Brother and Big Sister reading event. So any student in pre-K who had a bigger brother or sister that attended Forest Glen, we were able to bring them to the library, and we had activities for them. And then as you can see from the pictures, they just sat down and they read together. And it was one of the best events that kids talked about. And the littlest kids even kept saying, "Can I go back to class with my brother?" So that was one of our events that we had as well.
So we want to talk a little bit about our timeline as a leadership team with our cycles of inquiry work, and how we've gotten to this point of looking at a reading goal and our reading goal of clarity around instruction. And so I'm going to let Annie walk you through a little bit of the timeline as well of how we've gotten to this point.
So as everyone knows, I'm a literacy coach, and that means that I love books. So I like to tell everything through pictures and stories. So really just to kind of show you that BLT traditionally has been where it's just been a checklist of items, looking at planning picture day or calendar, and any little problem that would come in school. Oh, that's a BLT thing. Push it into BLT. Push it into BLT. So so in December we polled our BLT members, and we just asked them, what's your purpose here? You know, what are we supposed to be doing here? And we had not one person on our team said the same thing. So we knew we had a problem there around that we had to come to a common vision, mission, create a common vision, create a common mission, and create goals for us as a BLT. So we knew we were all doing the same thing. And what really led us to that is the cycles of inquiry. The principals, all the administrators took this a year prior, and then the coaches were brought in to this opportunity where we've been able to learn about the cycles work. It's a hard work and we're in the middle of it. So when we say we're only at step 2 and you're thinking, well, it's a year into it, this is just the general overview that really drives our work, the cycles work. So from there, what we did is we gave our staff, we gave our BLT members the mini professional development on cycles, so they understood it as well. And then we decided to just try and figure out, like, where are we even going to start? How do we even know what our problem is? So we had the coaches go into classrooms K-5 and collect engagement data. So we started there just to see, is engagement an issue? So this is just a sample of some of the data. And what happened is we realized we needed a lot more data than that. So we did a data dive as a team. And these are just some of the resources that we used to show that we never used just one piece of data. We used map data. We used data from our units of study. We used our access data. We used our ISOL data. That's a K1 early literacy skill assessment. And we were also able to use our phonics data. So we took time and we looked at the data to try and drill down, like, what is the problem that we're having? Where are we seeing the problems? And what ended up happening is all of a sudden there was a lot of frustration. And we, Scott and I really pride ourselves in something that we celebrate a lot about our BLT, is that we have open and honest conversations, and our BLT members really feel like it's a safe place that they can say how they're feeling, and there's no judgment. And during this meeting, all of a sudden teachers just started saying, I'm frustrated. This is hard. I don't understand why this is so difficult. And you can see in the beginning of Institute Day, we polled all of our teachers and we said, when you think about literacy, how do you feel? And look at some of these words: overwhelmed, complicated, difficult, challenging, and it's important. So the bigger the word, the more the people that said it. So you can see some of these words are really how people in our building were feeling about teaching literacy. So we knew from there that really we talked about, we had to figure out, when our teachers kept saying, but we don't understand, we don't understand, even after 3 years of implementation or 2 years of implementation, what we noticed is that our teachers didn't really have clarity when it came to, I'm teaching my lessons, but what am I really teaching my readers in front of me? So we decided as a team we wanted to develop the common understanding around foundational practices, like what is essential for all of our literacy classrooms. And then also the work of the literacy coaches, we created these overarching reading essential documents, which we really drilled down, what are you teaching and how are you going to teach it? So we're trying to make it as clear as possible to our teachers, what are you teaching? So obviously, go ahead.
I was going to say, and we've had a number of different opportunities for professional development along the way as a leadership team. And so we've visited the Chicago Literacy Group last summer. Our work with the ROE through the cycles work. As a group, we've looked at Lucy Calkins' book, Leading Well, and looked at excerpts of that, as well as the visible learning research of John Hattie. And so looking at a number of different sources, and a number of different ways to provide professional development. And in the center of the screen there, you see a picture of Jennifer Saravallo, who is an expert in literacy instruction. And through Jennifer Saravallo's group, we're able to use the grant money through the cycles work to be able to bring in one of her consultants. We weren't able to get Jennifer herself, but one of her consultants. And so our January and February Institute days were set aside for literacy professional development. And so her name is Gina Dignan, and she's actually a literacy coach on the East Coast, I believe. Connecticut, thank you very much. And so she has come in, she worked with Annie and myself to help develop our PD for those 2 days, and we had her come in January and then again in February. And what you see here are some photos of, this is from our February Institute Day, with staff really kind of digging into the work and looking at student data. And you'll hear about this a little bit later in the video as well, in terms of some of the work, because we hadn't really had an opportunity after that February Institute Day follow up as a team. We were going to do that during our March meeting, which you'll hear. So one way that we were able to bring PD in and use those grant dollars to be able to really meet the needs of our staff based upon overall clarity. And so we also took some time at staff meetings in January and February and had all of our staff analyze reading data and to help get us ready for that Institute Day. And so we wanted them to, no matter what you taught, we wanted them to be able to take a look at, we give them sample data and said, okay, what would you do with this? What does this tell you about how this student or how these groups of students are doing? And so using that 30 minutes of staff meeting time a couple times in the month of February to be able to let people dig in and really take a look at some data to get ready for that work.
And
Annie,
what was
anything to add?
Yeah, what was unique about this is you'll see that this is a mixture of math and literacy and special ed teachers and support staff. So this was not any activity we just did with our literacy teachers. We wanted to make sure that we had everybody involved in this. So everybody was looking at the process of how to analyze data.
All right. So, and then that leads us to our BLT meeting, which was in March. And so I'm going to see if I can pull that up here and see if I can get that to work. So give me just a moment.
So what we did is we just wanted you guys to know that things aren't stopping. Nothing's stopping for us. So we still held our March BLT meeting. We did it digitally or virtually, excuse me. And what Scott and I did is we recorded the meeting, and then we wanted to pull out so you guys could experience what a meeting is. Now keep in mind it's a 2-hour meeting. So we tried to pull out as much as possible, or we tried to condense it as much as possible, but I really want you guys to see the celebrations, and we pulled out some really positive things that are happening. So we hope you enjoy just the sneak peek of our Forest Glen meeting.
You guys know I live in the neighborhood. So as I see kids out and about, I'm making a real effort to make sure and go over safe distance, and connect with them, talk to their parents, ask how everybody's doing, ask them what they're reading. So
2 of the things that I worked on this week, one of them was what I had mentioned to you guys. I did a virtual show and tell today, which was a huge hit and just so good to see the kids. And I kind of asked them to show me something that they had worked on or done this past week. So that was just cool to see like what they've been doing. And I think they were all excited. The other thing that I did was I've been having families send me pictures of what they've been doing at home. And I made a weekly video. I put it in Marcy's document of FG Better Together. So if you go in there, you can use an app on your computer called Video Editor. And just like, it's a really easy way to just add pictures and put some easy like background music on it. And my family's loved that. And so I feel like those 2 things have made it like feel like we're kind of together. So that's been huge for me.
It's just sweet getting the emails from my students. I got a really sweet one yesterday. Like they're still applying everything that we've been teaching them during the year. And one girl said, I remember you taught us to like always try to make a real life connection in the book that we're reading. And so the book I'm reading, I made this, and it was just sweet that they're still thinking of everything that we've been teaching them. So they may not see it every day, but they are doing it. And I think it's so important to keep that up.
I think the work of the literacy and the math coaches in the past 48 hours has been a lot. And trying to make very thoughtful decisions about what's essential for our students, while also holding team meetings with every single grade level PLC district wide to make sure that we were getting input from teachers and that teachers had a voice and that they have choice over what our week 3 e-learning plan would look like. I think that is, and we were able to do that virtually. So I think that is something that we're doing really, really well. trying to stay a week ahead, but then also making sure the teachers are looped in and understand. So decisions aren't made above their heads, that we're all making decisions together. I think that's a huge celebration.
Everybody gets a big round of applause. I think this has been handled so well. I don't think I've ever been prouder of our district than I have through this. Your teachers are working so hard and your hearts are out there. I see it. I see the district, I see CSO being so responsive, and I think those tech people are working their asses off. I think that everybody is, and I think that I've never been prouder.
Like Dr. K, like when those first couple, what was it, Wednesday or Thursday before this whole thing kind of exploded, like I just kept on thinking to myself, like, wow, like she says that she's looking at her email every day, like, and that she'll respond to us. And like one of my colleagues, she said that she emailed her and she got like an email back right away about some concerns that she had. So the communication has been really, really well.
I just hosted my first Zoom meeting with my full class. And she is so ecstatic that she did it. And I was just really proud of her because that's really going outside of her comfort zone. So I think like the teachers are even taking these huge challenges and huge risks right now during this time when like nobody really like knows what's going on in our world. So I just like, that's a huge celebration. And I think that, you know, how we can figure out to continue those things.
She set up a Google Classroom too, so.
I really see this as a kind of one of those, I mean, this is a silver lining to this entire thing is yes, but people are now in a situation where they're having to look for other means to do things that are honestly things that we should just, we probably should know how to do or should know how to use in some way. And so then what happens to, I think the way that we teach kids is going to change as a result of this. When we are back in front of them, because they're going to have been exposed to something different, and we're going to have been exposed to something different. And so then, how do we capitalize on that?
Yeah, I think the cool thing that I'm seeing from this is that we had talked about like wanting our teachers and staff to take risk more, and I think we're seeing that because I think everybody is kind of collectively coming together and saying like, oh, well, I had this idea, how do I make it work? Or like you had this idea and you actually put it into action, kind of a thing. And so for me, like I've taken videos of like certain things that I've done, whether it's, you know, we had some stuff with report cards that we had to do for preschool. And so I took videos of that and posted them. And like two of my teammates were like, I couldn't have done this without those videos. So I think it's just things like that where it's, you know, if somebody knows how to do it and we have a list of those things, we can just make a list of people that are really good at certain activities, like you were saying, or apps, Annie. And just kind of doing that because I think it's just about supporting people to do it. And I think everybody's kind of coming together more than we normally like are. And I think part of that is a time thing. And I think part of it is just that we're all learning in this. And I think it's kind of creating a neat and unique environment right now with where we're at.
I work with 4 different classrooms, so I work with different kids, but one of the kids that I'm thinking about specifically, we were looking at her sight word, her ability to retain sight words within texts. And this one teacher and I were running records with her to see how she was reading sight words within texts and see if she was able to accurately read those sight words. And we had a theory that she wasn't being able to read those sight words within texts. And throughout our data, we actually found that she did do really well with those sight words. And my first grade PLC and I went through the data when we had that time when the cerebral presenter came in, and we're like, no, she knows her sight words within the text. It was more of an issue with how she was decoding words. And Becky, do you remember, she was looking at middles of words. She could read the beginning of words and the end of words, but she was skipping the middle of words. Do you remember? That was it, right?
Yeah, she was the initial sounds, even blends she was okay with, and final blends and sounds. It was the middle sounds that she was struggling with. She was working.
So we were able to really look at that data and pinpoint exactly where her breakdown was.
And we had a plan. So we had a plan of like, let's just start with compliment conferences and get really good at that. And then we're going to add this next layer in, and then we're going to add this next layer in. So like, there was so much momentum and so much excitement going from that training of, I can't wait to try this. So I feel like it's not just you that, like I feel like there's a lot of us that are feeling that disappointment of, we were so excited because of that PD to try these, to step outside of our comfort zones and try things and admit, hey, we're not really good at, maybe we're not as good at that as we thought. So I feel like that I've heard that from more teams.
You're talking in which step of which box we're in?
Yeah.
Which of the boxes we're in? Yeah, we're still at the point where we're box 2 in terms of we think we know where we think we've identified a problem to look at, and we are still in the process of working through that.
Do the teachers know what the students need to learn? Do the teachers tell the students what they need to learn? Do the teachers know what success looks like? And I think that's an interesting conversation. That last one is a much more deeper conversation that we can get into, because we're seeing that right now. For example, in the kindergarten, first grade, and second grade literacy meetings, we talked about retelling as that's the focus and narrative. And there are very different interpretations of what retelling is. Very, very different. So we had even talked about, does everybody understand what success looks like when it comes to retelling, right? So those were the 3 questions that you have to ask yourself. And he said that a student who knows what they're learning actually knows what they're learning. They're 3 times more likely to be successful in learning it based on the data. He said that they went into 91 schools, 91 different schools nationwide. And all they asked the students were,
yeah, I've got it here.
What are you learning?
Right.
Why? 0% of the kids could answer. 0% of the kids could tell you what they were learning and why they were learning it. So like a lot of the kids would say, well, it's because my teacher's teaching it. Like they didn't know the purpose behind it. And he talked about how like that really is our job when it comes to clarity. Like what are we really trying to teach and what's the purpose behind it? One of the things that Denise kind of challenged Scott and I with was like, your next step is data. Like you guys need data collection. We need to know, is clarity really a problem at our school? So between BLT members, administrators, and coaches, they go into the classroom weekly and will ask 100 random students throughout the week. They ask them 3 questions. What am I learning today? Why am I learning this? How will you know that I learned it? They ask a random 100 kids. And then every Monday, the report comes out of what percentage of kids were able to answer that. And it was just a way, it's not to shun teachers and say, oh my goodness, Jen Cortez, I went into the classroom and this many kids didn't say this. It's really to bring light to, is there really an issue with clarity? And do our kids really know what they're learning and why they are learning it?
And it doesn't have to be content based, right? It can be any classroom, any kid.
Correct.
I like that.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. So even though our focus is on literacy, when we talk about clarity, we could still see clarity in math and asking students that in math. That's a good point, Gina.
I was just curious, again, like thinking about from a pre-K perspective, if we're looking at the entire building, do the questions stay the same, or how do we modify them so that it makes sense for a 3-year-old. If you're randomly selecting children in the building, how does that make sense to a 3-year-old?
Right.
Yeah, I had kind of reflected on that a little bit as well, and thinking of like how, because I think it would be great to have data for that as well, but I think we would have to be more thoughtful about how we would do that for preschool a little bit. It would be a little bit different for our guys.
It would be 2 days in the fall and 2 days in the spring. And it would be back-to-back days where she would then go into classrooms and she would work directly side by side with teachers and give feedback right there in the moment to be able to be able to build off of that work.
I think teachers will respond a lot more to like a small group and on the job training than like a big group type of presentation, for sure.
Yeah, I think that'd be great to have her in to actually see the kids and kind of watch her do things that she's talking about and putting them into action. I think everyone would really appreciate that.
But again, I don't think Annie and I wanted to go forth and do something and just simply say, well, here's what we think is best without hearing from the group. And I heard a couple people kind of weigh in. Becky, I heard you weigh in, Jen, I think as well, but from other people in the group, from their standpoint, what they think.
No, I agree with that. I really liked that we were able to look at specific students and plan for them. And it sounds like maybe bringing her in, that might be a possibility of continuing to look at specific students. I mean, I know it's going to be different students at that point, but.
All right, everybody, I'm gonna send the attendance sheet in, and we'll be seeing everybody later.
All righty.
All right.
Sounds good.
Out, everybody.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much for bearing with us through that. Again, as Andy said, there was no way for us to take 2 hours worth of a BLT meeting and cut it down. It wasn't scripted in any way. We didn't tell people what to say. We just wanted to make sure that we had some way of highlighting things. And so I'm going to just real quick jump back into our presentation to finish things up here and just talk about our next steps. And so we feel like as a leadership team, we are moving towards, we think teacher clarity is the area that we need to focus on. And now we need to do some planning of goals and looking at how we can assess that. And so our next steps as a BLT are to identify those universal literacy practices across the building that we feel are important, determining those tenets of reading that here's what we believe as a faculty are the really important things for students to be able to have when it comes to our beliefs for literacy instruction, and then how do we establish those methods for collecting and analyzing data focused on teacher clarity. And so early at the beginning of the school year, on one of our August Institute days, we asked this question as well to our staff and said, what one word do you think and feel about teaching literacy? Do you want to think and feel about teaching literacy? And so, and again, the more often somebody wrote the word down, the bigger it shows up. And you can see right there in the center of the screen that confidence is something that people feel like they would like to have and don't necessarily have the clarity around the literacy instruction. So we know this is an area for us to focus on. Annie, anything to add there?
Sorry, there's a little bit of a meltdown. Yeah, so this is just, we wanted to end with the fact that all this work that we're doing, ultimately our hope is that our students and our teachers feel that way about learning, and that there's really no beginning or end. There's only change that comes along this entire process.
Thank you for giving us the time to take you inside of a BLT meeting and give us a little bit of a background of our work, and happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Scott, and thank you, Annie. I will kind of go around the room here and see if board members have any questions or comments. They had a chance, of course, to look at your improvement plan. We couldn't watch the video, but
sure,
otherwise see your slides. So let's see, Jessica, how about yourself?
Yeah, thank you. So I don't know that I have any questions, but just a few comments. I want to thank you, first of all, for sharing your BLT video. It's so fascinating to get that insight. And I just want to thank you for having the courage to share that and trusting our board and our community. I know that could potentially put you in a vulnerable position, but I think it really showed how thoughtful the team is and how hard you all are working and at home with your families. So I just, thanks for your commitment and thanks for entrusting us with sharing that. I really appreciated in the presentation too, how the focus is really on making reading a way of life and just making it look like it's a habit that you don't just do at school, but that you do because you enjoy it and it's fun and you like the books, and that it's not something kids do in school. It's something that you do for a lifetime. So I appreciate that modeling of all of those things and how cool it is to get that gift of a book. Because books are a gift. And so I love that you're modeling that as well. When I was looking at the presentation, I kind of misread the titles of the 2 word clouds. And I was thinking, oh, you did all this PD. And there was like this before and after. And so I was having all these kind of kudo thoughts about how, wow, what a transformation of this anxiety to this confidence building. And I can see now after hearing it from you that's really what your objective is as you plan this PD, that you want to get to that spot and with the tools that you're creating for clarity. And so that's a really exciting thing to think about, that you could go from this first word cloud to the second. I think that'll be super transformative. So, and I love that it's about supporting the staff and giving them what they need to have that confidence to move forward, to give students what they need. And I think that's a great focus. So really excited to see that. And, each time, I think this is our 4th SIP plan update. I've kind of lost track, but each time we see something new, and the cycles of inquiry is something that all the schools are doing. But I think this is the first time where I really realized that the plan is about a year-long plan for teacher learning. And I know it's been in all of the presentations, but this is the first time it really stuck out to me that that's kind of where you're headed. And so I kind of appreciate that perspective and the way that you've brought that out. I think the word cloud did that for me. So appreciate that. And then I think, some of my feedback is really, or just thoughts are more from Melissa too, about like how this process of seeing all 4 of these so far play out. It's just really been interesting to see how everybody presents themselves differently. And I think, looking ahead on our agenda, we have the calendar for next year. I think when we get to discussion, it'll be interesting to think about how the timeline of seeing all these SIP plans, how that plays out in the year. And kind of have questions about what makes the most sense. And and like just understanding the timeline of this process this year as its inaugural year versus future years as it becomes a process that everyone's more familiar with, and what kind of makes most sense to bring it to the board and when and over how many months or meetings, I think is something that would be good for the board to discuss. So that's all I had. No questions. Really nice job. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank
Jeff.
you.
Bruce, any questions, comments?
No, I just think that, I think Dr. Kaskowski is showing some leadership here with this. I think that the school leadership is responding to this. I think that, from last year to this year, we were sort of, as a former board, we were asking for some change. And I see that change having come to fruition. I know that was a painful process for a lot of people to go to, but I think the cycles of inquiry are paying benefits and dividends. And I think we can see that in the statistics that we see before us and that I've seen over the last 4 meetings. So kudos to Dr. Kiskowski, her team, and the way we're moving forward.
Thank you. Thank you. I may get interrupted a little bit. I'll quickly get on mute because the dog. Ted, how about you?
I don't have any questions, but I did want to reiterate what Jessica said. I appreciate that little glimpse into the BLT process. I know you were apologizing for it being so long, but it did give me a good flavor for the types of work that you're doing. Thanks.
Oh, we just wanted to make sure that we, Annie and I watched that video, and we've sat through that 2-hour meeting 4 or 5 times now, I think, to try and get those video snippets down. And there was really no way to narrow it down, but we felt like we captured it pretty well. And so appreciate that, though. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ted. Julie.
Hi. I don't really have anything to add. Just ditto what Ted said. Thank you for sharing that meeting with us. I think that gives us a lot of insight, like he said, and what Jess said, into what you guys are working on and how you work. And it's really collaborative and it's really fun to watch. So thank you for all your hard work on your presentation tonight and everything else you guys do.
Thank you. Guillermo.
On mute. Yeah, not much to add. Thank you for the presentation. I think it's great what you guys are doing in regards to encouraging the kids to read more and develop a love for books. I think we saw it across all the other schools that it is one of the lowest scores when it comes to literature. Seems that we do really good in science and math, but reading still kind of one of those things that we're working on, and hopefully you're sharing what you're doing with some of the other schools because it's pretty good. So thank you.
Thank you. Jason.
Sure. Again, not really any questions, but just some comments. Just as to the reading, it's one thing to hear you and Annie talk about reading, what you're doing to implement that love for reading in the students, and then as a parent of a Forest Glen student, just seeing what your teachers and staff are doing, even at this in the time right now, Mrs. Clem doing the daily read alouds for students, and just I know my son is just all about, oh, I want to see that book. If we have that book to read along with Mrs. Clem, it's just something that really inspires him every day. He's like, let's see the new read aloud. Not just in addition to the ones that the district is doing. I happen to see Scott Casper's relatively often walking his dog at this time, and we were out front with the kids the other day, and what's the first thing Scott says to kids? Hey, what books are you guys reading? And starts talking about the different books that the kids are reading. So it's not just a talk. It's something that I've seen in your teachers of just in my day-to-day activities. And just a comment off your BLT. You talked. I heard a comment as to kids not knowing what is being taught and why it's being taught. What's funny in listening to these read alouds that Mrs. Clem is doing with the preschoolers, that's actually one of the things that she talks about in the read aloud. Say, why are we reading this book? What are we learning from this? And just these takeaways that, because these kids are younger, they're taking away some of the same ideas, maybe not at such a complex level, but they're taking away these aspects of what, and more importantly, why, and that's being taught to them, and it's neat to see. And I just want to give a shout out to the EC team and just the job that they're doing just to keep everyone involved right now. I see it with you being here today, Scott. It's just a great time just to give a shout out to them. I'm so proud to have a son in that program, and to see the work that they're doing is just absolutely awesome. And it's just really good to see them and how they're continuing to do that even in this trying time. So you have a very good team that you should be very proud of.
Oh, I am very proud of them. They do wonderful work, and so we are very thankful to have that program be a part of our building, and those students be a part of who we are at Forest Glen. And so thank you for that. But as you heard in the meeting as well, that presents some challenges for us as well from a PD standpoint. Sometimes and we're great to have that. We're glad we have that representation on our team to be able to look at what kind of PD do those folks need as well for the work that they do with students. And so it creates an interesting challenge for us, but it's a good one.
Thank you. And Ashlyn or Abigail, I don't know whether your sound is working well, but perhaps you have a reflection or a comment. question for either Annie or Mr. Kleps? Yes?
I don't have any questions. I just want to say it's cool how you guys are still looking how to get the kids books during these times. So that's cool.
Did you hear that, Scott? You're muted, Scott.
Yes, I did. Yes, I did hear her. So thank you.
Okay. Abby, how about yourself? Did you have any comment? Abby, looks like her screen is frozen.
Looks
Nope.
like it.
Yeah. Abby, I'm not sure you can hear us. If you have an opportunity, if you can hear me and you have any question or comment.
She just muted herself, Bob, so I think she's good.
Yeah, you need to, oh, you're good?
She just did mute herself from.
Okay, good, thank you. We'll go, well then we'll go with that. My apologies if otherwise. Scott, first of all, Annie, thanks for giving us a little peek behind the curtain there.
Just thank you for all of your work.
Whoops, I think I heard a question from, I think I heard Abigail. Abigail, can you say it again?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you right now.
Okay. Just thank you for all of your work.
Well said.
Thanks, Abby.
Worth waiting for. I did have one question. I'm so curious, and it's that sort of data part of my brain. When you were assessing engagement and times when students weren't engaged, right? I couldn't help but wonder, was that if they like looked out the window for 5 seconds or they played with their pen for a minute? Like how long did it take them to be quote unquote off task?
So we follow, I like how Scott says, that's Annie's response.
Well, you were the one in there, so you can describe it the best.
So we followed Jennifer Saravallo's engagement inventory. So we encourage that as literacy coaches, we've encouraged it district-wide to, it's called kid watching. So you just take 20 minutes or 15 minutes of your independent reading time. And it depends on the age of the kids, but every 2 minutes or every 5 minutes, you literally just go around and mark what each kid is doing. So it's not like they looked out the window for 10 seconds. It's maybe at 1 o'clock they were engaged, but by 1:05, when I did a status check, they were looking out the window. At 1:10, they were doing this. So that's how we collect the engagement data.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you both.
You're welcome.
Well, thank you all for taking the time. And Annie, our apologies for interrupting the family a bit.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry.
No, that was us. We imposed. Thank you both. Good job. All right.
Appreciate it. Thank you. If I could just say one other thing is before I leave, I want to thank Ken Harbauer for the time he took to put the video together for us. He's done a lot of work for us, and so I greatly appreciate all that he has done. And again, thank you for the opportunity to share our story. We appreciate it. And
thank you very much.
All right.
Thanks,
well.
Scott.
Thanks.
Okay. The second item that we have here is the budget development calendar. And Eric, I believe you're now a co-host and you'll take us through this.
Absolutely. Do you see that, or you need me to share the screen?
If you can share the screen, that's fine. But Eric, I printed mine out. Maybe other board members did. I'm not sure.
If you'd share, that'd be great.
Okay, I'll try. I have 2 screens up, so I don't know how it's going to work. Let's see.
Make sure you're sharing what you want to share.
That one, you see it?
No.
Depends on what it is. It is nothing. I see it well.
Oh, here we go.
Here comes something.
There you go.
Is that it?
You got it. You're good.
All right. Yeah, so just this is a requirement through ISB and school code that each year the board must adopt or at least be presented a budget development calendar. This is what this is. It's a 1-page document, very similar to what I've presented in the past. The idea being really just to make sure to set the stage of what's to come. I would say this year's a little different. We're not in the boardroom right now, and I'm not able to sit down with the other administrators and building level administrators and go over these things now, which typically we would be doing that during this time of the year. So some of these steps I think can be done remotely. I intend to do them remotely, just via email and phone calls to the other administrators. But you know, some of them are going to be a little different, and we're going to address those as we kind of work through this. But in general, the process is very similar to what we've done in previous years. The goal being, of course, to get a preliminary or tentative budget to the board in June, understanding that we do not meet in July, and then to approve the FY21 budget in that first meeting in August. One other thing I would add, the very first step, February and March, staffing. So internally, the admin teams and building level administrators have been talking a little bit, you know, about different staffing needs for next year. There's not a lot of positions that we're really discussing right now. I think that's the reason why it hasn't been kind of a loud discussion in front of the board, because there really isn't a lot of positions we're talking about right now. So just wanted to talk about that briefly. You know, as we move forward, if there are positions, you know, that will be brought to the board. So this calendar will be a little bit skewed. Just based on how we're remote right now. So in March, we might have presented something to the board. Well, that might end up being in May, it looks like right now. So it's kind of a summary about what this is. If there's any questions, I'm happy to go over them.
Okay, let me just kind of call on board members if they have any questions for Eric at this time, and just for the sake of order. Guillermo, any questions?
No questions.
Thank you. Julie?
No.
Very good. Bruce?
Are we pretty much staying staff neutral?
Well, Bruce, I just want to clarify. We're talking about the calendar here. Your questions, it seems to me, would be appropriate as the district comes forward with some staffing numbers and places. I don't know that we can get any definitive responses tonight. I don't think anybody's prepared. I don't want to answer for you, Eric, but I just think in terms of the appropriate time for the question, I think it's maybe just a little premature, but go ahead.
Well,
Eric.
I know last year, and here it says staffing projections February through March 2020. I know we're off because of the COVID-19. But I was just wondering if we were going into it with that sort of attitude, or if there was a change in philosophy.
I mean, my approach is more in the traditional budget approach and just the timing about different steps. You know, I haven't really had in-depth conversations about, you know, every potential ask or desire for a staffing change. I think that will continue, you know, that conversation will continue to evolve as, you know, administration meets and talks about next year as we move closer to it. I think the focus now has just been, what are we going to do to get through today and tomorrow? Not so much on what changes we're going to push for next year.
Right. I think too, to add, we're also being extremely cautious as we watch what's happening with, you know, evidence-based funding and just grants and, you know, state reimbursements. Everything is so up in the air that it seems premature, even though it's a little later in the year. It seems premature with all the unknowns that we have in terms of how long this may go on, you know, for all of the unanticipated expenses that go along with a school closure. You know, as I said, we're still paying everybody. We're mandated to. We're feeding everybody. We're mandated to. I think most districts that I'm in communication with, everybody is sitting back and watching because there's just so many unknowns. And so, you know, I'd rather take a cautious approach and hopefully at least have some answers in terms of, you know, knowing where we stand of what is our anticipated return. The longer this goes, we know that there's longer expenses. And then we also know, you know, where the economy factors in and that there's going to be some decisions made at the county level, you know, that have the ability to impact us. So, you know, as more of those pieces fall into place, then our plan can become much more concrete.
Got it. Yeah. You mentioned earlier, well, I won't go over it. I'll just watch the video again, but I appreciate that cautious approach, because I think it's important in the sense that we don't know what's happening. We don't know even if we're coming back to school, if how school will look like, or what school will look like in August and September when we're planning on coming back. And so, and then, what the unemployment rate will be like in Glen Ellyn, and if people are gonna, and if there'll be any relief from that through the state because of massive unemployment. I mean, there's so many questions that aren't answered right now. It's just, I think a cautious approach is prudent.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, we're getting a head start on planning around different types of scenarios that might come, depending on how long the closure is and extends for. We're kind of doing some best case and worst case planning, but there's still so many unknowns that we just don't have right now. And while that's frustrating to some people, it's just the reality of what we're in. So we're moving exceptionally cautious in terms of watching and monitoring all of that, knowing that we influence very little of that. But what we do influence is how well planned and prepared we are for all of those scenarios. So that's really where our effort has been, is just to make sure that we're ready for what might come next week, next month, and then down the road to be ready. So I wish we had some of those answers. We are sitting back and watching, but our planning is moving forward. We're just delayed on this piece because there's so many things that we don't know.
No, and I get that. And I'm happy that we're sitting on a savings account that previous boards have really worked hard to preserve. So I think we're doing a good job. Thanks.
Thank you, Bruce. Jessica?
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Ted?
No questions.
Julie, did I ask you?
I don't remember, but I don't have any questions.
Jason. That's all I have to answer. Jason?
I'm good. Thank you.
As am I. And Eric, thank you. And I'm looking to see if your toughest inquisitors have any questions for you. And at the moment, I don't see any. And since the students have some audio problems, I might be getting questions in the chat room. And if they do come up, I will pass them on. But at the moment, you're off the hot seat. Thank you.
I'm gonna try and stop sharing my screen. Let's see if this works.
Well done. Here we go. Okay. Next on the agenda, we have a couple of discussion items, and we haven't heard from him in a while, but we're going to begin with Mr. DePorter again. Eric, you've got an important update on our transportation contracts.
Absolutely, yeah, and I think you all know this, but this has been probably the majority of my time has been spent dealing with both transportation and food service the last few weeks. The interest being, of course, to find a way to help those third-party contractors the best way we can in an appropriate manner. So in regards to transportation, it's important to keep in mind that we're part of a transportation consortium. So the high school district, along with the elementary district of Marquardt 15 and Queen Bee 16, the four of us joined a consortium to go into our transportation agreement together to try and basically get some purchasing power. So, we're kind of a unit of four districts that kind of always likes to walk in step. So we have been meeting quite a bit, not only together with the business officials of the four districts, but also reaching out to both First Student and Hopewell to talk to them as we've gone into this closure and to talk about ways to help them continue their operations. So what we've brought tonight is kind of an update on those efforts. To put it in a nutshell, this was a negotiation. First Student reached out to us and said, if we are not able to agree to pay them roughly 80 to 85% of a typical bill, then they're going to have to close their doors, and it will be the end of that bus barn or that location that serves our district. So, our initial response was, okay, well, explain to us how you come to 80 to 85%. Give us your certified payrolls. Let us understand, because we're all numbers guys. Let us understand your finances, show us that information, and we will bring it to our board and we'll support you, because that's the interest. We all wanted to help them, during this crisis. So we got resistance to that. So it took quite a while of going back and forth to actually get some real data. To First Student and Hopewell's credit, they've said from day one, they're not looking to profit off of this. They simply want to be at a zero profit environment where they can maintain. They just want to hold their businesses up and not let them fail during this closure. So again, we reiterated that was our desire as well. Show us some financial information about what your costs are for these locations, and we'll move forward. So that took a long time. I'm sitting here right now, I'm not sure why it took so long, but what I can say that I'm happy with is we did eventually get it. The recommendation tonight that's going to be up for action later tonight is to approve an amendment to our current contract with First Student for general student transportation. And the rate within that is going to support only their critical, their essential location employees in the bus barn. So that would be their location manager, their assistant location manager, some tech people, some safety people, and some technicians at that site. It ends up being about 14 people that First Student identified as critical to remain working and going to work each day in order to keep that facility up and running and be ready for us, whether or not it's May 1st or if it's mid-August. In both cases, they're going to need people on site to be able to keep that location viable. So the proposed amendment tonight only funds those 14 people and some additional costs related to fleet maintenance, facility maintenance, some of the costs that they need just really to exist. They've argued repeatedly that they're not asking for profit, and I think these numbers bear that out. So our monthly payment would be approximately 40% of what it typically would be in light of that. Now, the other aspect of this, which is maybe the most critical part that everybody is aware of, is the drivers. From day one, every district, all four of us have expressed an interest to make sure that those people aren't harmed. That's been the goal from day one. So with that in mind, we had these negotiations fully intending to come to an agreement that would help those drivers not see a financial loss due to this. So interestingly, as the federal government came through and passed some relief measures, it became very clear that the best financial decision for First Student would actually be to furlough those employees. Because once those employees are furloughed, they become eligible for unemployment as well as benefits through the CARES Act. And when you look at the finances around that, those drivers can be made whole, and actually maybe, I wouldn't say they're going to be better off, but they're definitely going to be made whole, and they're not going to be suffering financially by going that path. And then there's the added bonus in doing that, that there are no taxpayer dollars going to fund those drivers' income, yet they're still getting the money. So we thought that was a good win for everybody involved. Both First Student and Hopewell furloughed their drivers long before we were able to reach an agreement to keep these 14 employees in place at the bus barn location. So that already happened before our negotiations about what an appropriate financial assistance level would be with those bus companies. So that's why you'll see in this amendment to our contract with First Student, it's only covering those costs for those 14 employees related to the bus barn operating expenses, if you will. Happy to answer questions. Like I said, this has been probably about a 3-week effort. I'd have to give a lot of credit to Chris McLean, the Assistant Superintendent for Finance at Glenbard 87. He was kind of our point person with the main person at First Student after we realized that each of us were getting different offers from First Student, along with our colleagues throughout DuPage and Cook, South Cook, all around us. All the business officials are talking, and the numbers were different. Some people were asking for 100%. Some people were asking for 50%. So we thought it made sense to have one point person take the lead.
Eric, thank you. Thank you. Let's see if board members have some questions, because we will have an action item on this a little bit later. Bruce, do you have any questions for Eric?
No, I think you've done a good job with this. 100% doesn't seem right, and 0% doesn't seem right. So it sounds like you negotiated in the best interest of the district and for student to keep everybody going. I know at my wife's company, they want their dealers, she works in car dealership services. They want their car dealerships to survive. So they just said, you don't have to pay anything for April. And it was a huge relief. And I know places like insurance companies, because there's less driving going on, have also given, money back to their insured, because people aren't at as much risk. But we're all going to suffer a little through this, or maybe a lot, but I think we're through this good faith effort. I think we're doing what we can or the best job we can, knowing what we know now, to keep everybody whole. So thanks a lot, Eric.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Bruce. Jessica. Jess?
Yeah, sorry, it just takes me a minute to unmute. Yeah, so thanks, Eric, for all the work that you've done on this. So am I correct in understanding that we would be paying about 40% of our typical bill?
That's correct, yeah.
And in what capacity are we using these buses while school is out of session?
We're not using them at all. We are somewhat unique in that, because we're doing the drive-through meal distribution. Some districts around here elected to just continue to have a driver or two drive a bus around, and we just decided that it wasn't going to do anything for us or improve our situation at all. So we haven't used any buses during this closure.
Okay. I think it's fair to answer to say, Eric, that we might not be using the buses, but the payment is also for us to maintaining the integrity of the transportation services.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's a big part of this.
Yeah, absolutely. Is the fleet maintenance and that operation facility, just to keep that up and running, is critical, because, and I do agree with what their argument, First Student's argument was continually, that if they have to shut that facility, they just couldn't guarantee that they'd be able to get it operating and be ready to transport kids, whether it's May or August. That was kind of their point all along.
I mean, I'm sorry, just before you start, I just want to remind board members, particularly in this context, that we definitely want to allow each board member to complete their comments before other board members speak. Give me a chance to call on you so we don't step over each other. So Jason's smiling. It's a good point, though, that you brought up, Jay. Jess, go ahead.
And can you help me understand how these 14, how it was decided that there were 14, and what role the negotiation had in that aspect? And to me, just somebody who doesn't know anything about anything, 14 seems like a lot. So I just want to address that.
Yeah, in those positions, if you look at the proposed agreement to our contract, they actually list them in the attachment at the end. And those were really presented to us as those essential employees to keep that location for First Student up and running. So like I said, it's the location manager, assistant location manager. I know there's some tech support people. I think there's 3 or 4 actual mechanics, technicians that work on the buses. And that's where they went down that line. And we actually did go back and forth with them. We said, okay, explain to us, why is this 14 and not 10? And they had a good reason for that. And I think all 4 of us, when we were talking to them, 4 different business officials, all felt pretty confident that they knew that we were scouring their financials. We were looking very closely at what they're doing. And First Student was being very honest, I believe, at that point, understanding that if they weren't, they were never going to get a consensus amongst us.
One thing I didn't understand from the document and was something about summer school. And so if for some reason we're not able to have summer school, is this something that we would be committed to paying the 40% or exactly what we would maybe commit to tonight? Are we committed to paying that through the summer months, even if we don't use the services in the summer?
No, we are not. And that actually brings a really good important thing I forgot to mention. We are in year one of a 2-year extension with First Student. If you recall, this first year was an 18% increase over our previous year's rates. The second year of this extension calls for a 3% contract increase. This amendment to our proposed, the proposed amendment to our current contract, First Student is agreeing to honor that 3% for next year. So not directly related to what you're talking about there, Jessica, but that I think is an important part of this. That was also a concession the First Student agreed to in exchange for getting these kind of operating payments now for the next couple months.
And then my last question, if I have time for it, Bob, is okay. I'm assuming, and you can tell me if I'm wrong or not, is that you've looked into what available state or federal aid packages might have offered for the transportation cost, either to the transportation company or to us. And it's been discovered that for whatever reason, those aid packages didn't have anything at this point for them that we could take advantage of. But what if another aid package becomes available and it is of benefit to the transportation company? I guess, if the burden is being taken on by state and federal government at some point, why should the burden be on the local property taxes? And so is there some kind of clause in what we're agreeing to that if those funds become available, that it then doesn't fall on our
I think that is addressed in there. And I know that was part of our conversation. I'm looking at the agreement now and I don't see where it's specifically enumerated in here. That was a focus of ours to make sure that in no case are we paying on the other side of the aisle, they're getting federal dollars. I'm looking at it now to see if it's even in there. I know that the other part of this I should
look at 4A, Eric.
It's in where?
4A.
Got it. Yeah, so it is addressed, and that's another good point. We worked very closely with Brian Crowley on this all throughout the process, having our legal counsel or virtual table, I guess.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Ted.
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ted. Julie.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Okay, gotta find all the buttons. So I might be re-asking what Jess asked, but I missed it or didn't get it or what. So my question is, what did you say about the summer? This will not carry over to summer, or it will? And are we going to be renegotiating if not? Did I miss that?
I think the question was, does this obligate us to pay for summer transportation even if we don't use it? And the answer is no, it does not. There's a clause in here now. I see it. It's 4D. It just says, it says the depot will support our transportation needs for summer if needed. That's it. So there's no part of this agreement that mandates that we pay through the summer, I guess, is the answer to that question.
Thank you. Okay. That's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you, Julie. Guillermo.
No questions. Thanks.
Jason.
Yeah, I just had one. So in looking at paragraph 1 of the third line, go to the fourth, where it's saying that basically that this is going to go through the end of the executive order or May 20th, 2020, whichever occurs first. What is the plan going forward after May 22nd? Let's say if we're not in school, are there conversations about continuing this?
That's not part of this agreement, but that's a good question. I don't think anybody really answered that. We were more focused on getting some relief to those companies now.
Right.
I think as we move forward, and if we're not able to return to school in May, we might be coming back with another proposed amendment to our contract. I mean, I think this right now, the idea behind this was for some timely financial assistance to the bus companies.
No, I realize that. I just don't know if any conversations have been had as to what happens if this continues.
No, we haven't tackled that yet. That'll probably happen.
No, I was just curious.
Yeah, no, good question.
Okay.
Good, thank you. Eric, just one clarification. I want to make sure I understood the amendment correctly. There is every expectation that the 40% cost that we will carry, we expect or have a high probability that it will be part of our either normal, regular reimbursed transportation cost, or that given the COVID-19 aspect of this that's generating this kind of cost, that some of the federal money that is going to flow to the states through a package for education, that some of that in some proportion will flow to the district, and that you might be able to submit reimbursement through that. And I know you probably don't know the answer to that yet, but I think that's your expectation.
Absolutely. So the first part of that, I can confirm that ISB has already issued a statement saying that the general transportation reimbursement claim, these expenses will be countable. And specifically, they said that, traditionally, and I don't want to get too much into that claim specifics, but traditionally that claim is based not only on expenditure totals, but also mileage. They're gonna focus on expenditures only, is what their guidance has said, so that districts can be reimbursed for these expenses while not traveling any miles. So that's the first part of that. And I think, Bobby, you make a good question, good point. The second half of that, there is some federal relief coming to government entities. Last week there was a portal that was released that shows that District 41 is eligible for, I believe, $282,000 in federal relief should everything play out how it's currently prescribed to play out. I will offer, though, that the specifics on how those dollars are going to be obtainable have not been released. It's going to be a reimbursement type claim where we would submit, qualified expenses incurred during this closure. I would argue that the non-reimbursable transportation claim dollars would fall into that, but again, that's just speculation because they haven't released any guidance on how that's going to work yet.
Right. So we'll go after whatever we can, but I think it's way too early to feel secure that we'll actually see any of that.
Correct.
Got it. Very good.
And if you look at 4B, it also kind of addresses that as well.
Yeah, this agreement is written to really protect the district should money become available. And it really is to protect first student as well. If there's federal stimulus dollars that either protect first student or the district, this agreement, addresses that.
Right.
Good.
I would like to throw in, just in all of the conversations that we're having across DuPage, this is an extremely district-friendly, consortium-friendly modification to the contract. I'm hearing people that agreed to pay 80%, 84%. So this is a really good outcome that took a lot of time to get there. But just to give you some idea of what some other districts are doing relative to their transportation costs, some of them are footing 80% or higher of the cost.
Very good. Okay, before we
Melissa, if I can just piggyback on that, I think that's a credit to Eric, because if you listen to what he said, we have people like Eric that are sitting in negotiations and just standing their ground saying, no, I want the backup for what you're saying. I need the backup for what you're saying, and not entered into these kind of agreements blindly. It puts the district in a position to have these kind of agreements that can be mutually beneficial to the district and to our transportation providers. So it's credit to the way you negotiate this?
It was not easily come to. I think it took a lot of work on everybody's part, both in terms of First Student and the business managers from the district and Brian Crowley as well. So, you know, again, I think as a transportation consortium, it's a very good outcome for the districts and a good outcome for First Student. So again, I agree. I think it was well worth the time and energy that went into it.
One last point I wanted to one last clarification for action tonight is just the amendment to our contract agreement with First Student. At the time that we had to get our board packet out at the end of last week, I did not yet have the daily cost for Hopewell. So at our next board meeting, I will bring in it's going to be the exact same amendment to our contract. It will just have for Hopewell. So this tonight is for First Student. At our next board meeting, I'll bring an action item requesting an approved amendment to that contract, and the exact same amendment that we have tonight, but I'll have the Hopewell dollars in there. So just a clarifying point.
Thank you.
Good clarification. Okay, I'm going to move on to the second item that we have here for discussion, which is the 2020 technology recommendation of the student Chromebooks. Mike, I think you're up.
Yes, this is the annual refresh for our 6th grade Chromebooks, the incoming 6th graders. To Hadley, every year we provide them with a brand new Chromebook. The one we're recommending is the same one that we had recommended last year. So it will provide conformity, which helps for support and maintenance. Price is pretty much the same as it was last year. We're asking for a few more Chromebooks than we had in the past. Just with all the uncertainty going into the summer, we want to make sure we've got enough in the way of replacements and spares for students to go around. Otherwise, the recommendation also includes the Chrome licensing for each Chromebook, as well as a hard shell case for each Chromebook and shipping for the devices. Our plan is to pay for this out of a one-time payment from the 2021 school or technology budget. And in keeping with our program in 8th grade, when students graduate with these Chromebooks, they get to keep them, they take them home with them. Our plan is still to have those rolled out this summer. Talk to the vendors about making sure they've got supply and we'd be able to get these deliveries in June, and I was assured we would. So that is our plan moving forward. We still plan on doing the same thing we do every summer when it comes to 6th grade Chromebooks, getting them received and processed and ready to go by fall. So happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Michael. Julie, any questions?
Nope.
Thank you, Julie. Guillermo, any questions?
No questions.
Very good. Bruce, questions?
No, it sounds standard like last year.
Thank you. Ted?
No questions. Looks good to me.
Very good. Jessica?
I don't have any questions, but I kind of fell down a rabbit hole. So I'll just summarize what I found, because I thought the costs were kind of creeping up, and they sort of are, in that I think in the first year that we did it, it was like $127,000, and it hovered around that point for a couple of years, and then last year or 2 years ago we saw a bigger jump, and last year, and then this year is another jump in price. But when I calculated like how we had increased the fees, that offsets it. So our net is more like $136,000, which puts us close to where we started. And that's the rabbit hole I went down. And so I feel good with where we're at for the numbers, but
just a little bit more. I'm sorry, just a little bit in the, and as far as the cost goes in the devices, one of the reasons we saw a little bit of a jump last year, and this year's cost is really the same. It didn't change from last year, but it's the same device. The one we had purchased last year and this year is the newest of that version, which also includes the touch panel and the convertible display, so it will fold down. So there's a little added cost that goes along with that. The early Chromebooks were really lightweight. So even though, yes, they were less expensive, they were also a lot less durable. So we've had better luck. But yeah, and the other piece with that rising cost is Google had also announced that they were going to bump up their licensing cost from what the retail is $30 a license to $38 a license for this coming school year. And given the circumstances, they put that off for a year. So we can expect to see a little bit of a jump, I think, in that Chrome license for next year.
Okay. Well, I just thought that it was smart to increase the fees a little bit because that sort of offsets it. And I can vouch for how awesome the Chromebooks are now that my kids have theirs at home. My daughter is constantly flipping it to be in all its different positions, and there's not games, but there's instructional activities that she can do when it's in iPad mode that she really likes. So I think they're worth it. But anyway, so thank you for explaining that.
Great to hear. Thank you.
Jason. Nope. You're good. I think he's
there
good.
It is. I'm good. I was looking for my mouse.
Thank you. And I am looking in the chat room, and I do have a comment that Abby has sent in. She writes, I think it is very important to put money towards good quality Chromebooks for students because basically all of our education depends on them. As many of you can see, Ashlyn and I are having difficulty connecting due to our Chromebooks and possibly the age of our Chromebooks. You see, you gotta love these two, right, Mike? Because they shifted from Eric. You're gonna get this question, you're gonna get this one. So it is important to find technology which can withstand the wear throughout the years to make sure technology doesn't get in the way of our education. Ashlyn's smiling. I'm assuming you second that, Ashlyn. Yes? Yeah. Mike?
I couldn't agree more. We were trading chats because they were having some difficulty with the audio, and while we haven't determined exactly why that is, some of the older machines, they do start showing that wear and tear by that third and fourth year. So that's why it is so important to refresh them as often as we do.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you all, board members. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
I think we can then move on to our third, which is the summer capital project bids. And I think Dave and Eric, I'm not sure who's up first.
Mike, I can take it. So this is our last capital project for the year. This is the drainage repair behind Abraham Lincoln School. We had 7 bids picked up, 7 contractors did bid at the public bid opening. The apparent low bidder was Holiday Construction for $87,000. And then the next day they called up and withdrew their bid because they had some calculation errors. So they were out. So the next lowest bid was for Manival Construction at $147,200. So we would just ask the board to approve this bid. And any questions?
Eric, did you have anything to add?
I would just add that this is one of those examples of getting some favorable numbers. If you recall last year when we first talked about this, we did a placeholder of $800,000 for this project. In our 5-year capital plan project, we brought it down to 275 on that budget, thinking, okay, it's a little more realistic. And now we've got a proposal for 147,000. So just good work by Dave getting this out in front of the architects so we can get this bid and get a favorable number.
Very good. Board members, Ted, questions, comments?
No questions.
Thank you. Guillermo?
Nope, no questions.
Jessica?
Nope, I appreciate it, but it's under budget.
Very good. Bruce?
No, I'm happy the work's getting done at Lincoln.
Yes. Yes. Julie?
Nope, I'm good, thanks.
Jason?
Nothing for me.
And let me just see if my student board members have anything in the chat room. They do not. So you're off the hook, Dave Scarmato.
Very good.
All right. Thank you. Thank you all. We'll move to the action items. up first is the consent agenda. Are there any items board members would like to be removed from the consent agenda to be considered separately? Hearing none, may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda, which includes a resignation and retirement on the personnel report, the school district payment order, and FOIA reports for the time period of March 17th, 2020 through April 7th, 2020, and the regular meeting minutes of March 23rd, 2020.
Motion.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Mr. Curry,
Yes.
Mr. Estes,
Yes.
Mrs. Buttermer,
Yes.
Mrs. Hill,
Yes.
Mr. Lobach,
Yes.
Mr. Guzman,
Yes.
Dr. Bruno.
Yes. We then have a few superintendent recommendations, and the first one up is the summer capital project bid. May I have a motion to accept the bids as presented and authorize Assistant Superintendent of Finance and Facilities and Operations, Eric DePorter, to engage with Manivel Construction at a total cost of $147,200 to be paid from the 2021 capital fund as outlined in the report.
Motion.
Need a second?
Second.
We'll open it up for discussion, but before doing so, Melissa, any comment? Dave or Eric, any final comment on this?
No, I just support the recommendation, and as I had said earlier, we don't see anything at this point that would prevent us from staying on target with the summer's capital projects.
Wonderful. All right, any other discussion, board? Hearing none, that we will move on to the roll call. Ms. Moak?
Mr. Estes,
Yes.
Mrs. Buttermer,
Yes.
Mrs. Hill,
Yes.
Mr. Lobach,
Yes.
Mr. Guzman,
Yes.
Mr. Curry,
Yes.
Dr. Bruno.
Yes. The second recommendation is the 2021 Board of Education meeting calendar. May I have a motion to approve the 2021 Board of Education meeting calendar as presented?
Motion.
Second.
Thank you. Dr. K, any comment on this?
You know, just real quickly, the cabinet has spent several months aligning their processes of this calendar. And so we believe we'll be able to pull everything off. We may need to add an item or two to the workshop type meeting, but everybody has taken a really long time to look at this from all angles and make sure that their work could happen within the context of those meeting dates.
Thank you. Board, any other discussion necessary?
No.
Jess? I saw
Yes,
your-
yeah, I guess I think my feedback to somehow denote which items are not flexible and which items are would be helpful, either bolding or italicizing one or the other would be useful in the future as a continuous improvement type of thing for the meeting calendar, just so we know as a board. And then I think at some point it would be interesting to talk about the timing of the SIP plans for next year, because I think they go over 5 months, which seems like a long time. You know, and maybe that doesn't matter based on what we're doing as a result of it, but it seems like it's a change. This year was a change to over a 2.5 month period, and next year is a change, put it over a 5 month period. So it might be worth discussing in the future. I don't think that it doesn't change how I'm going to approve the calendar. I think that can be an ongoing discussion.
Right, that might be an item where we push that into a workshop meeting. You know, I think the board has seen by doing it this way to have principals present on different nights, you get a much deeper look at what's going on in every building. You know, 5 months is a lot of time, but if you go earlier in the year as a principal, you're kind of able to wrap up how you ended the year before and how that impacted the start of the current year. The later in the year you go, then obviously you have more of that year's data. You know, but we can certainly look at those dates and then decide to have the window a little bit shorter. Do we need to push a presentation into a workshop meeting? You know, and that's all very doable.
Thank you. Thank you, Melissa. Any other thoughts? Okay, then roll call. Ms. Moak?
Mrs. Hill,
Yes.
Mr. Lobach,
Yes.
Mr. Guzman,
Yes.
Mrs. Buttimer,
Yes.
Mr. Curry,
Yes.
Mr. Estes,
Yes.
I guess you don't care about me.
oh, sorry, Dr. Bruno.
No, we don't.
Dr. Bruno?
That's for the heck of it. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
That's all right.
I'm glad you finally realized about it.
The third item is on second steps, social emotional learning resources. May I have a motion to approve the purchase of second step curriculum resources with professional development for all elementary buildings at a cost of $29,530 to be paid for through the teaching, learning, and accountability budget as presented.
Motion.
Second.
And before I ask board members if they have any additional questions, Katie, you're with us. Maybe this is an appropriate time if you have anything additional to say, and then I'll close with Melissa.
No, we don't have anything really additional in regards to the resources. We are currently working with our principals to see if it's possible for us to actually utilize some of our seed grant money to support the cost of the resource. We're still looking into that. So if it's unable to come out of that, then it will continue to come out of the teaching and learning budget. But I just wanted to let the board know that that might be a possibility, which would offset the costs.
Thank you, Katie. And Melissa, any final thoughts?
Just, I'm really excited. I think this will take us a big step forward in terms of having a universal curriculum for SEL. So thank you to Katie and to the work of, you know, everybody who did the trial implementation feedback. I know it was an extensive process, so I'm excited, and I know the teachers are.
Okay, your sound was breaking up. A little bit, Melissa.
Okay, I'm hearing to just said excited teachers as well, so I'll keep it short.
But you can kind of look at that. Maybe you can make an adjustment. Any other comments from board members?
Hi. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought I saw your light. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I think I'm very much in support of this. I think it's important that we have a common language across all the classrooms, and I love the at-home components as well. I just want to acknowledge that this is a continuation of what was a finding of the special education audit, that this is a big piece of improving the MTSS. And so, you know, our support is continuing the support of the outcomes of that audit. And I apologize if I didn't remember this being addressed last time, but if Hadley, they're going to do something else, will they pilot something else or will they select something else?
So they were part of this implementation study as well. However, the students and the staff all felt that it really didn't meet the needs at our middle school level. So they are continuing to investigate other resources to add to the work that they're already doing. So that's what Mr. Dively is going to be bringing to the board. I think it's at the next meeting. Okay. To kind of talk about those needs. They're really looking for something that focuses more on that executive functioning for students, because that's an area that they feel that their students really need. And Second Step did not do that for them. And after surveying the teachers and that implemented, and then also the students, the feedback was that it just wasn't meeting the needs.
Okay.
Very good. Okay. Ms. Moak, roll call.
Mr. Guzman,
Yes.
Mr. Curry,
Yes.
Mr. Estes,
Yes.
Mrs. Hill,
Yes.
Mr. Lobach,
Yes.
Mrs. Buttermer,
Yes.
Dr. Bruno,
Yes. And the last item is the transportation contract amendment. May I have a motion to approve the amendment to the district's existing contract with First Student for general bus transportation as presented?
Motion.
Second.
Thank you. Before we move forward, either Eric or Melissa, any final comments on this?
No, I've said everything.
Nope.
Good.
Good.
Board, any other questions, thoughts?
Nope, good.
Wonderful. Ms. Moak, roll call, please.
Mrs. Buttermer,
Yes.
Mrs. Hill,
Yes.
Mr. Lobach,
Yes.
Mr. Curry,
Yes.
Mr. Estes,
Yes.
Mr. Guzman,
Yes.
Dr. Bruno.
Yes. Thank you. Next item up is our other board governance learning together. Melissa, I don't see anything on the agenda here for learning together. Is that correct?
That's correct. I think we're all learning together.
And we are learning remotely together. We have to amend that.
There's been a lot of learning going on lately.
Well, there sure is. Okay, very good.
Oh,
Yes, did I hear somebody?
yeah, this is Jessica. Probably just to acknowledge that we've taken the
HumanX Insight Survey or something or other.
Okay.
Everybody do that.
Oh, did you forget?
Did everybody take the survey, HumanX?
Yep, you should have received an email. So if you haven't, let Nancy know, please.
Yep.
I'll have
Do by the 27th.
Okay, that's good to know. I do not recall seeing that email.
I saw it. I haven't taken it yet, but it's the one that takes like 45 minutes to take. So,
Yeah.
so I guess Gers said it was what Guillermo said. It's due later in the month.
Okay.
Yeah,
good prompt.
I took it today. It took quite a while. I didn't think all the questions were super relevant. So, because it's a generic like leadership one. Yeah, this is interesting.
This is I think this is the one designed to determine skill, talents or strengths.
Yeah.
Probably in a more generic way, but good.
Right.
That's a good prompt.
Do by the 24th. I'm sorry, not the 27th.
Okay, we just lost 3 days.
Yeah.
We better all get to it. Very good. Okay, we've got.
I know one more, Bob, just real quick.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jason, please.
No, and it's just something to put out there that I just saw perusing of a village business of a village board meeting minutes, just see what's going on, and that there is a 8-lot subdivision being proposed over by Glen Ellyn Country Club that would be in Ben Franklin's borders. That just a pre-application, but just so it's on our watch.
Good. They need to stay there. We need to definitely keep them in mind. Okay, we have upcoming meetings, April 27th, 2020, 7 p.m. And then Monday, May 11th, 2020. We certainly assume that we will be doing them virtually. Finally, are there any items for considerations for future agenda?
Yeah, I have one.
Please.
The IASB resolutions, the submissions are due June 24th, and those are for the resolutions that we vote on at the III conference in November. So if any of you fellow board members have ideas for resolutions, or you have written one and would like to submit that, let me know. I know I'm going to be working on probably 2. So that in mind. I would like to request to put on a future agenda, probably in May, discussion and voting on submitted resolutions to submit to III.
Julie, can I ask a question? What's the deadline to get those?
June 24th.
So we would, if we were going to put any forward, we would then have to have those adopted by the first meeting in June, correct? And that's.
Yeah, so I mean, I assume that we would discuss which ones we want to submit and do any edits and all that. So, I mean, I'm thinking we don't wait till the very last minute, but
Right, no.
yeah, June 24th is when IESB needs them.
Board members, consistent with the rules that we agree to on future items, we then turn to the board to see if there is consensus to have a discussion about proposals, to look at possible proposals. So let me just sort of, I'll go around to get an acknowledgement of how.
I like that, Ted.
Feel. Well, oh yeah, well, Ted's already done it. That's right. He's got an emoji. He's got
look at that.
Oh, Jason just gave me another one. Oh, that's good. So
I took it from Ted.
We got two thumbs up on that. Those of you who haven't figured out the very advanced emoji system there, how about you, Guillermo? Are you okay with this discussion?
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Jessica, you seem to have maybe, yeah?
Jess is frozen.
Oh, Jess has got the actual thumb.
Jessica's knee loves it.
The real thumb. And Bruce, yes, there we go. Bruce. This is good.
How do I get rid of it?
No, I think it just goes away.
I wonder how you do that.
Well, I don't know how to do the thumbs up either, but I'm fine.
I can't get video, but I can give you a thumbs up.
I'll take that. Better than a thumbs down. That's good. I feel very supportive. I'm glad that Julie is initiating this. And our fellow our student board members, while you don't really kind of have a vote on this kind of stuff, this is about bringing forward to the State School Board Association at its annual conference a set of possible proposals that the body would adopt, and then they would advocate to the General Assembly to pass law, to move policy. So it's very important. It's really how the work of the collective boards do their work. Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Julie. We will look at
Thank you
on the agenda. And then anything else? I'm sorry, before I, no? Okay, thank you. May I have a motion to adjourn to closed session in order to confidentially discuss the appointment, employment compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees and collective negotiating matters between the school board and its employees or their representatives? I need a motion.
Motion, sorry about that.
It's okay.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, Ms. Moak?
Mr. Estes,
Yes.
Mr. Curry, Mrs. Hill,
Yes.
Mrs. Hill,
Yes.
Yes.
Mrs. Buttimer,
Yes.
Mr. Guzman,
Yes.
Mr. Lovak,
Yes.
Dr. Bruno.
Yes. The board.
Question.
Question.
Is a question for Mike of procedurally as to, do we leave this meeting to go to the other meeting, or what do we do?
Yep, you'll be timed out of this meeting. Mike, as the host, will shut it down, and then you go into your calendar because you should have a new.
No, I have it all.
Yeah, you should have a new invite for the closed session.
Then are we coming back into this meeting to adjourn it?
No.
No, we'll do that in the closed session and add it to this tape.
Okay, sounds good.
And the board will not be taking any action after the closed session. So are folks clear what we're going to do here? We're going to, the live stream will end. We'll close this meeting. We then go back into the invitation that we were given to go into closed session, and we'll come back into a Zoom session. Yes?
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right. Mike, close this out.